July 17, 1962. At the height of the Cold War, both superpowers fight for technological supremacy over air and space. And NASA's engineers man the front lines.
These are the early days of high-speed, high-altitude flights.
Everything is new, everything is on the edge.
In 1955, NASA's forerunner, the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, commissions the X-15, a rocket-powered supersonic plane to reach the edge of Earth's atmosphere. The chief test pilot for the X-15 program is Major Robert White. A veteran of 3 wars, White holds the record for the fastest manned flight ever, over 4,000 miles per hour.
Major White and the other X-15 pilots were flying faster and higher than anyone had ever flown before.
First, he hitches a ride to 45,000 feet under the wing of a B-52 mothership. The engines burn for 82 seconds, accelerating White to 3,800 miles per hour. Nearly 60 miles above the Earth, he is higher than any person in recorded history.
He was flying very high, very fast. Suddenly there's something out there.
White radios to ground control that he sees multiple unidentified objects.
There are things out there. There absolutely is.
One particularly stands out.
He saw this strange object outside of his cockpit window.
The object seems to shadow his X-15 as he zooms through the upper atmosphere at more than 5 times the speed of sound.
It's a great surprise. Doesn't expect to see anything up there.
He's got to figure out how far away they are, how big they are, how they're moving relative to him. Are they dangerous?
The object keeps pace with the fastest aircraft humanity has ever produced for several minutes. When White lands, he reports his sighting to engineers as part of his debrief.
White's story remains consistent. The objects are small, about the size of his hand, 30 or 40 feet away, tumbling, and moving along in flight with him. All these are very puzzling aspects.
It's just very difficult to imagine what it is that could be traveling at the same speed as a Mach 4 rocket plane.
Official reports suggest the objects were caught on film by at least one of the onboard cameras. But mysteriously, this footage is no longer available.
No footage. I mean, here's a plane that's bristling with all kinds of cameras. If a film exists of what's going on outside that cockpit of an object, you can bet that will never see the light of day.
Without the crucial footage, White's testimony is the only clear evidence of the mysterious object at the edge of space.
This isn't the type of individual who's going to make up something or imagine it. He saw a UFO, and he had no reason to fabricate that story. This is a NASA Air Force mission flown by an Air Force pilot. You don't get more credible than that.
One idea is that the unknown objects could be the remains of a satellite or spacecraft.
The likelihood of it being man-made space junk or satellites is extremely remote because there weren't many things that had been up that high at that time.
I don't know what it was, but it certainly, as far as we know, wasn't anything of ours.
NASA officially describes the phenomenon as a byproduct of the X-15's experimental propulsion system.
Because of the supercooled liquid nitrogen in use, you get ice crystals and ice flakes forming on the outside of the aircraft, and as the aircraft maneuvers as it's in its flight, you'll get breaking off of these ice crystals and flakes.
If you're up at 300,000 feet, the sunlight is going to reflect off of that very strongly and make it very, very bright.
At lower altitudes, traveling at such high speeds, friction with the air would generate intense heat, melting ice crystals as soon as they form.
When you think of a rocket plane going thousands of miles an hour, you think of friction. but it was also in a vacuum, and there was precious little air around it.
There's very little resistance. There's very little friction on the outside of the spacecraft, so these ice crystals are going to float along with the aircraft.
White remained uncertain about what he saw on the flight. Many others are reluctant to accept the official explanation.
Unless they fully admit to what some of their pilots, their astronauts, have seen, we're never going to get to the bottom of the story.
NASA grapples with mysteries on a truly cosmic scale, but not all of the cosmos' riddles come from distant star systems. On a winter afternoon in 2012, strange sounds from the skies draw people from their homes. The noises you hear are authentic recordings by camera phones and home video. Witnesses record the sound across Australia, Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Analysis of meteorological data rules out any known weather phenomena capable of causing this kind of sound. Scientists desperate for a natural explanation discover that the phenomenon seems to coincide with the aurora borealis. The northern lights usually erupt as a response to intense cosmic radiation bombardment. NASA launches a fleet of 5 probes called Themis to investigate the aurora. The probes discover that violent solar bombardments can snap the invisible lines of Earth's protective magnetic field. And the severed lines slingshot powerful bursts of cosmic energy toward Earth. Mission scientist Vasilis Angelopoulos calls this phenomenon a spacequake. And incredibly, a spacequake produces sound, even in the vacuum of space.
These spacequakes create waves in the audible frequency, but they are electromagnetic. Space is full of pulsations that if you were to play as sound waves you would hear. It's almost like it is alive.
But despite the similarity, a human being would have to leave our planet to hear the noise of a spacequake.
Waves from out in space penetrate through the Earth's atmosphere only with their magnetic component. The sound portion of them doesn't make it through. Sound waves refract before they manage to come down to the lower altitudes of the atmosphere.
So far, NASA's spacequake investigation is unable to provide any natural explanation for the sonic phenomenon in the world skies. Research is ongoing.